for 1,000 straight games. That's definitely something to be proud of. It's been a while since we had this guy on the line, a friend of Phil Kessel's. Obviously, big VGK, very knowledgeable fan when it comes to hockey, and knows a thing or two about poker as well. It's been a little while since we had Poker Daniel Negreanu joining us on the line right now. Daniel, good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing good, Danny. I'll always appreciate it when you come on. It's been a little while. I wanted to say, because I haven't talked to you in a while, congratulations on the big win, over $3 million, winning one of the biggest poker tournaments of the year. And isn't it amazing that you're pretty open and honest on social media that you were not having a good year, right? The cards weren't cooperating. That's going to happen. And, you were having one of your worst years as a professional poker player. And then all of a sudden, isn't it amazing how that can change in just a few days?
Well, yeah. See, that's the hard thing with poker, right? When you work a regular job, you get paid the same amount each week, each month for the most part. But with poker, you could be doing everything right and losing money. And that's sort of how the first part of my year was going. I was down about 1.6 million or so, wow. And obviously won 3.3. So turned it around. And such is the life of a professional gambler. It felt good because I felt like I've been pretty dominant and I just haven't had to let go my way in the all-in situations. And that still seems to be the case for me. But I really feel as confident as I've ever felt about my poker game right now.
Is that one of your biggest wins in a tournament?
Yeah, it is. Actually, for a first place, it is. I came second years ago in a $1 million buy, and I won 8.7 million. But that was for second. First was 15 million. So my before this, I think the top first prize I'd won was 1.8. So this is definitely the biggest win I've had.
And rightfully so. I saw how excited you were after you had won. I'm just curious, what is a night for Daniel Negreanu when you win a big tournament like that and you win $3.3 million? Are you a guy that kind of just takes it easy? Do you party? Do you hang out with friends? Are the bottles of Cristal flowing? What do you do on that night after you win?
So exactly what happened was this. I drove home. My wife was on the couch. Bachelor in Paradise was on and Dancing with the Stars that we had to catch up on. So I literally went straight from that into Bachelor in Paradise and watched all the drama unfold on the beach.
You're not really that guy, are you? You're not the guy that's going to be drinking till 4 o'clock in the morning, going crazy at Dre's nightclub, right? You're not really that
Here's
guy.
The thing, right? I'm 48 now, right? When I was 23, 24, when I won in a tournament way back then, threw a big party at the Bellagio, huge feasts and alcohol and all that sort of thing. But I've been there, done that, right? And that's not the life that I lead anymore. But right. Yeah, it's certainly not that guy. I never really was that guy, but I partook in the Vegas lifestyle for a moment.
I once had a conversation with Antonio Esfandiari, the magician himself, and he had won a tournament. And then he told me he went over to a nightclub in Vegas and his table was right next to Kobe Bryant's table, the late Kobe Bryant. And they both spent like $300,000 on Cristal trying to outdo themselves. And I said to myself, why? What's the point? Right.
Yeah, well, different strokes for different folks, right?
Right. Yeah, not like exactly. Well, congratulations.
Nice work.
I never got into that stuff, man. I don't like the music. I'm seeing Stone Temple Pilots in Vegas this weekend. That's my kind of music. I never really understood spending $30 a drink. Or
30. Where are you? You go to some cheap clubs if you're.
Yeah. Well, that's if I don't get a table. If you want a table at Dre's or if you at any big time nightclub, you're spending tens of thousands of dollars just to sit down. I don't know, Daniel. I never really understood that, but that's just me. Maybe I'm old too. That's just me. I don't know. But before we get to some VGK hockey, last time we spoke, we were talking about the Garrett Adelstein and that whole situation and cheating scandal, alleged cheating scandal. Some time has passed since then. I put your thoughts up on YouTube, and it's got a ton of listens because people care about what you have to say when it comes to a lot of stuff, especially poker. What are your thoughts on it now? It's been a little while. Have your opinions changed at all? Do you still think it's not cheating or it is cheating? What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Well, I think based on the information we have up to this point, nobody can say definitively either way. You can't be 100% either way, really, because there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that could potentially mean, there's something going on, but there's nothing concrete, right? So I feel like she's sort of past that point of, needing to prove herself at this point. The unfortunate thing for her, right? Imagine she's innocent, right? She's already dealt with all this stuff. And there's no way she'll ever be able to prove her innocence. The only thing that could be proven is guilt, right? If there's some whistleblowers and all that sort of stuff and everyone comes forward and says, this is what's going on, then, she can be proven guilty. But but the people that think she's guilty, she can't prove to them that she's innocent. So she's already been smeared in the public eye. And I think that's the person at fault there was Garrett himself for handling this in the way that he did. And he didn't just do it then. He doubled down, he tripled down. He's gone all in on this. And I think it's really a bad look for him.
Have you had a chance to talk to Garrett after this?
No, I haven't talked to him personally about it. He seems to be really jaded about it. Like, he actually put out a tweet and I'm like, what are you talking about? He put out a tweet saying, guys, it's really important not to accuse people of cheating without hard evidence. So let's be better. I'm like, what? Isn't that like, aren't you the worst perpetrator of that of anyone in the world?
Yeah, and I saw that tweet too, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Show me real evidence. Like, I'll tell you what's weird about this story, Daniel, and maybe you'll agree with me on this. If she just immediately said, hey, you know what, I misread my hand, or I thought I had a pair of threes or whatever, we wouldn't be talking about this, right? There would be no scandal there. And maybe
there would, either way, based on the reaction.
You really think so?
Yeah, there would have been anyway. I mean, if they would have split the pot, and like, or he would have won both runouts, then maybe nobody would like go down that path. But like, the bottom line is this, like, a lot of sleuths are on the case right now to try and put two together, and they're going to analyze the data to death. But for me, one of the things that stick out is, Bill Perkins, who's a wealthy guy, and Geraldos Vulgaris, who was, working for Dow. They put out $250,000 reward for anybody involved to come forward and, be a whistleblower. Nobody did. Nobody bought. And I can't imagine people that are trying to steal 10 or 15,000 off a stack, given the opportunity to make 250,000, wouldn't come forward with information. So
very good point.
That's that bodes well for her side. But again, there's conflicting. It is really dramatic because there is a lot of like peculiar things surrounding this. A guy, guy $15,000 that works in production off of her stack at the end of a session. That's fishy, right? So there's a whole bunch of fishy stuff. So it's not clear. But I don't think it ever will be. For people that believe that she cheated, they're going to continue to do so, and people that don't will stay in that camp.
Two things that didn't help her based on her own behavior. You tell me whether you agree or not. Number one, giving the money back. I know she probably felt very pressured, and I know Garrett probably made her feel very uncomfortable and bullied her, which is wrong. That's number one, though. She shouldn't have given the money back. I understand she was probably put in a very difficult position. That's number one. Number two, if somebody steals, I don't care if it's $20 or $15,000, especially when they're an employee, you press charges because that is a thief. And I would also say, once a thief, always a thief. That guy who stole $15,000 will probably do it again. It won't be in that casino, but he'll do it again. I think those are two big mistakes that she made. Do you agree with that?
So the second one, she did press charges.
I didn't know that. Okay.
She didn't initially, but she ended up pressing charges.
I didn't know that. Good.
As far as the first one goes, a lot of people, this proves nothing. Like, giving the money back, a lot of people go, why would she give the money back if she didn't cheat? I'm like, well, you know what? Why would she give the money back if she did cheat? Right? If she actually was a cheater out there to steal money from people, right? The last thing you would do is raise suspicion by giving the money back and making it look like you're dirty. So for me, it proves nothing. For me, it's similar to what you were describing, which is just like flustered. I don't need the money. Like, I just want the controversy. I want the conflict to go away. We know this happens. For example, how many people per month, for example, admit to crimes they did not commit under duress and under pressure just because they want to make it stop.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Here, take the money. Let's go back and play. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Yeah, no question. In the long run, this is probably not good for poker, though, right? It's bad for poker. Even though a lot of people are talking about it, this is probably not a positive, right?
Yeah, there's a silver lining, I think, in part, like what sort of spawned, another look at the security systems, with the RFID cards and stuff like that, to make sure going forward that every live stream that happens is, even more secure than it was. Because maybe, when it first was introduced years ago at the World Series of Poker, it was very protected. People were very paranoid. There was one man behind a room, no phones, no anything, right? And I think after time, it sort of got a little more lax, like more people are streaming and doing it this way. And hopefully this sort of whole thing, the silver lining will be, increased security on these streams to ensure that like nothing bad can happen.
I want to ask you, Daniel, about hole cards, because I remember when this first started, over 20 years ago, right? I remember, I think it was the year where Chris Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker. They were just getting started at that time and showing hole cards. I remember Eric Seidel, great player, been around forever. He didn't want to show his hole cards, and he made a big fuss about it. And there were other professionals that didn't. And look, there were a lot of people that said, I don't want people to see how I play, so on and so forth. But it's so important for, and I'm sure you would agree, for fans and poker fans to be able to see how players play certain hands. I'm curious, what were your thoughts when that first started? And you were a big face of the game even back then when it first started. You were just getting going and you were making a name for yourself. What were your thoughts on it back then, and has it changed at all over the years, or has it remained the same?
Yeah, really, it was Eric Seidel, as you mentioned, pretty much the only one But there were others who said, I don't want people to see how I play and all this stuff. And I think ultimately, and I think it's sort of been proven that that was a short-sighted view, right? It was about me right now and not thinking about the greater good of the game and how to promote it. Because, the World Series of Poker had been on ESPN and CBS before, but without the hole cards, it's very difficult to tell the story. It's when you're watching the show, you want to see, what people have and what they're going to do. It makes it more interesting and exciting. So I was always kind of for it, and I thought it could be like a unique wrinkle. And it's created sort of a new environment for poker players now in terms of study, right? In the old days, you kind of just think on yourself. Now you can actually study game film. So I can look over all the hands that a player plays and sort of come up with some tendencies and things that I pick up on them.
Yeah. What did you make of the new venue? I never really even asked you this question about at Bally's in Paris, the World Series of Poker. My personal opinion is I didn't like walking back and forth, and I kind of was so used to the Rio and that one hallway there. I just wanted to get your overall impressions of the World Series of Poker, minus that incident that they had where you messed up your hand and people got injured. That was an unfortunate situation. I'm glad you're okay. But what did you make as a whole, the new venue of the World Series of Poker? Are you for or against it?
Well, here's the thing. Going into it, I love the Rio. The Rio is a perfect facility, the perfect place for it. I had a lot of concerns, as did many, about parking, about traffic, about getting in and out. A lot of people thought that was going to be a huge problem. Wasn't a problem at all. The facility itself, the temperature. At the Rio, you often saw people bundled up with hoodies and scarves and whatever because it was freezing in there. Yeah. The temperature in Paris and Bally's, ideal. The walk back between Paris and Bally's is so rare. You don't really do it unless you're playing one tournament there one day and you're playing in the other spot another day. So that worked out just fine. And overall, I gauged the success of it based on, the other players, and they all seem to like it. They like the fact that it's more central, more options to eat. And again, the concerns that we initially had, I went in with very low expectations, very low. And I was pleasantly surprised, as I think many were, that, it actually worked. For the first time ever, the World Series of Poker happened right on the Strip.
Daniel, do you think they give out way too many World Series of Poker bracelets these days? Because, even the main event now, it's not what it once was, right? That was the big event. That was it. And now it's like there's so many tournaments where the buy-in is so much more, and there's so many more prestigious events. And it seems to me that the main event isn't really the main event anymore. What do you think?
Well, the main event is always going to be the main event. I don't think anything's ever going to supersede that. But as to your point about more bracelets, I think part of the reason that happened was COVID. So during COVID, we wanted to have something, right? But you couldn't do anything live because everything was locked down. Right. So they had like an online series on WSOP.com here in Las Vegas and, whatever. And then they had on GG Poker internationally, you had more World Series of Poker events. So what happened was when World Series of Poker came back live, we had the live series, but now we had these two spots with the online stuff that still took place, as well as what I just got back from, the World Series of Poker Europe. So yes, I think that we've gotten to the point where there are too many, but I do believe strongly that they're going to revert back to a system that just, covets that prestige. I think what you want to do now maybe is, if you're going to run series, is that you want to make the bracelet very special and run more World Series Poker Circuit ring events. Ring, like sort of the minor league version, right? Yeah. And when you water down bracelets by having too many $400 online turbo bracelets, that's problematic. But I do think that again, COVID was the reason for it, and I think it'll rectify itself.
Yeah, tend to agree with you. All right, Real Kid Poker, Daniel Negreanu joining us on the line. Daniel, let's talk about one of your other passions besides poker. Of course, that's hockey. You and I were at the game last night. They played a very bad Arizona team. Let's be honest, not very good. But I got to tell you, Daniel, the first time I spoke to Cassidy, I was impressed with him. Very well spoken, very honest. He's got a little bit of gallant in him too when it comes to player accountability, but being a player's coach, he puts guys in the right positions. I think he is a much better coach as a whole, in my opinion, than Pete DeBoer. Pete DeBoer's won a lot of hockey games. I'm not going to say Pete DeBoer not a good coach. I just like this guy. I think it was a good hire. I think Cassidy's the perfect guy for this team, and I know we're very early, but I really like what I've seen from the Vegas Golden Knights. I think Logan Thompson is a proven starter in the NHL. And I just think this team is playing at a very high level. They're having fun. The chemistry seems to be better than last year, and they're a fun team to watch.
Yeah, no, there's only one thing I would say that, that I would disagree with when you said players coach. Like Bruce Cassidy doesn't have the sort of moniker of being a players coach. He's one that holds them accountable, but he calls them out. Like the difference between Gallant was, after a game, he wouldn't stick in a guy, but Bruce will. He'll be like, this guy screwed up. He didn't do this. Like he'll call him out, and he'll do so publicly. As far as the system that he put in place, I like the zone defense a lot better. It makes for a very goalie-friendly situation where we went into the season with, arguably the worst tandem in the league. A lot of people thought so, in Aiden Hill and Logan Thompson. But because the defensive system with the zone is, really helps with rebound control and stuff like that, we've seen them fit into the system really well and perform at a very high level. The team is very, very healthy right now. The only thing that concerns me, I would say, is when you look at the schedule so far, they did have a great road trip on the East Coast, and won 5 straight, came back. And I told people to bet against them the first game back. It's very typical for the first game back on a trip for guys to be a little lackadaisical. My biggest concern is so far their schedule has not been that tough, right? How do they measure up against like the really tough teams of the league, like the Colorados, the Tampas, now the New Jersey Devils, who are tough to play against, and the Leafs and whatnot they did well with. But yeah, so I think like going forward, the team being healthy is key, because if they're not, the thing is they're like 1 or 2 injuries away from being like really not that deep, right? Right now it's kind of fragile. You have the top 6, which is set, and then you have Kessel on the 3rd line kind of playing with 2 guys, and then the 4th line is pretty solid as well. The defense is as good as it gets with, the 6 men they have back there. But again, 1 or 2 injuries, and all of a sudden you're plugging and placing, and the injuries are inevitable. We've been incredibly lucky this year. Like last year was insanely unlucky. Everyone got hurt. And this year we had like nobody get hurt. Nick Raw might be hurt like right now, but that's like minor compared to what we faced.
Sure. Speaking of somebody that rarely ever gets hurt, your friend Phil Kessel, who I, by the way, love interviewing after games. He's a great guy to talk to, and I know you guys are close. I just cannot even imagine in our lifetime we will ever see anybody even come close to breaking what Phil Kessel has been able to do. 1,000 games now played consecutively. I mean, he is the Cal Ripken Jr. times 10 when it comes to the NHL. It's unbelievable. I mean, obviously you got to take care of your body, right? You got to take care of yourself. We know that he's played games when he hasn't been 100%. That had to have happened a plethora of times in his career. But how do you put this into words and perspective, Daniel? Phil Kessel, I mean, I asked him the other night, I said, how do you put this in perspective? He said a lot of luck, but he's also a very modest guy. There's luck, but sometimes you got to create your own luck too. How do you put this in perspective, this streak that Phil Kessel is on with consecutive games played?
Yeah, well, certainly luck plays a role, right? Because like a random flying puck in the face, anything could happen. COVID hit, he didn't get it, during the season. But the statistic that people don't really realize how big of a deal this is. There's only been in the history of the NHL 372 players that have played 1,000 games total, right? This is a man who in his second year got cancer. He had cancer, and after cancer went on this streak. And a lot of people, sort of mocked like, Phil Kessel not having the same sort of work ethic in the gym and all this kind of stuff. But like, there's plenty of funny stories about how he's just a beast. He's one of those freak anomalies that has core strength and lower body strength that's like, above all else. And he's also, I think if you watch him on the ice too, he's incredibly smart as a hockey player. Like he knows what areas are really dangerous and he's going to get hurt in, and he avoids those. But more importantly, like I was at the game last night, and I wanted people to realize this. I've been saying for years, the way to have a powerful power play that works is hot potato. Move that puck quickly, right? The issue, when you watch Kessel out there on the power play, and his points per game per 60 on the power play is right there with Eichel. He's at like 1 point per 60. Yep. But when you watch him on the second unit, he does not dilly-dally with that puck. He doesn't hold the puck and look around. He makes a sharp pass. He's pushing these angles and things like that. It's very dynamic. And, he's used to playing, obviously, in Pittsburgh with players like Crosby and Malkin who would finish on these chances or also play the hot potato style. I'd like to see the power play go even more towards that and be less about, possession and perimeter. I do think the power play is much improved under Bruce Cassidy because DeBoer likes, that sort of spray and pray style from the point. But the forwards going down low, holding the puck, I think has been, beneficial for the power play. But I really still wish that as a whole, the majority of the units start to play more hot potato like Phil is doing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And by the way, Burns is at 696 consecutive games. He is the closest to that. I don't think that's going to be broken, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I'm glad that Phil Kessel was signed here. I think he brings that veteran leadership. I know he does. Likable guy in the locker room. Let's talk about another likable guy in the locker room, a guy that is doing a little bit better than I thought he would, and that's Logan Thompson. Let's talk about the goaltending position. First of all, he jokes around with the guys, great camaraderie. He's very confident for somebody that he was playing in the AHL last year at this time. He's a very confident guy, and rightfully so. And, we got 2 goaltenders now that are playing at a very, very high level, higher than expected. What are your thoughts on Logan Thompson, the goaltending position right now and where we're at? Okay,
so I should say that before the season started, I made a bold prediction that by Christmas, Aiden Hill was going to win the starting job. And that's only because that's not a knock on Logan. It's just I've always been very high on Aiden Hill. Aiden Hill was playing in really bad situations, in San Jose and Arizona behind really bad teams and still posting the numbers. And I think both these goalies actually fit in. Actually, Aiden Hill probably even more so fits into the system that Bruce Cassidy employs with the zone defense. But Logan's been great. He's top 5 or top 10 in goals saved above expectation. Aiden Hill doesn't get as many minutes. so he's not, on that list, but like his numbers are great. So far, the goaltending is like more than held up. Like I said, going in, you ranked the tandems, and it was difficult to find a more unproven tandem. Now, remember, Logan Thompson comes into the season with like 19 starts. That usually doesn't bode well. Like having an absolute rookie goalie who's, people don't have a book on yet really, but they're starting to develop one. We'll see how the length of the season wears on. I like that Bruce Cassidy is kind of going with like 60-40 split where they're sort of sharing the net. I think most teams in the NHL are going that way now, mostly tandem based. Like you're never going to see goalies, I don't think, again, play 70 games.
Right.
60-40 is reasonable because it's gruesome. I mean, it's like the goalie position, it doesn't look like it's exhausting, but it's incredibly, you lose like 5 to 10 pounds wearing that stuff.
And mentally, you can't take 2 seconds off. You're on a shift. Yeah, you could say to yourself, you take mentally a couple seconds off, you could cost your team a goal. But if you're a goaltender, it's even more important. You can't take really any time off as a goalie. No question about that. All right, let me ask you this. Assuming, and it's a big assumption, that this team remains healthy, and again, that is a very big assumption, is it fair to say, do you think, that this team could contend for a Stanley Cup? Because I'm not ready to say that yet. They're definitely a playoff team. They could definitely win some games and win some series in the playoffs. I'm not ready yet to say that this team is an elite team that can contend for a Stanley Cup. What do you say?
Listen, contend is, sort of a vague word in a sense. And I think obviously with the start that they've had already, I think, that puts them in a position where they should be able to contend, right? Now, again, the real test, as far as I'm concerned, is what is it going to look like through the tougher parts of the schedule? They've done a really good job of beating it for the most part, outside of like San Jose and St. Louis that we just lost to. They've done a really good job of beating the teams that we're supposed to beat, right? But can we beat Colorado? Can we beat, right, higher up echelon teams in the conference? The Western Conference is a little more wide open this year. It's not quite as strong as it was, last year, the year before, and the East is pretty dominant. So, the pathway's a little maybe potentially easier than it was. So I think they could contend. But again, the number one factor for Vegas in order for them to be able to contend is staying healthy. If you lost Eichel, for example, you've got major problems. If you lose Pietrangelo or Theodore, that's another big problem. Even Alec Martinez, because right now that top 6 is as good as, like, I was a couple other coaches in the league said our bottom 2 is the best in the league with Whitecloud and Haig. No other team in the league really can boast like the bottom 2 being that strong.
Agree. Yeah, agree. It was nice to see Stone get a goal yesterday. Unbelievable hand coordination, whipping that puck in the air. And we all know how good Eichel is. I mean, when you watch Eichel on the power play, he's like a magician with the puck. I don't even know how else to describe it. He's like nobody else in the league. I mean, there's very few that can do what he does. They're a fun team to watch. And like I said, I like Cassidy a lot. And I think they made a great hire there. Pretty much the opposite of the Raiders hire, but we can talk about that on another day. What do you got going on in the future here, man? What's your poker schedule looking like, Daniel? What events you got going on here in the next week?
Yeah, well, before I get to that, the Eichel thing, when Buffalo came to town, I would always tell people, I said, watch this guy on 3-on-3. Watch Eichel on 3-on-3. He's a cheat. He is like on 3-on-3. I put him up there as like the best forward you will find.
He's a freak.
So dynamic 3-on-3.
His eye-hand coordination is something like I've never seen. He's a freak with the puck. Just give these guys a little bit of open ice, and you could actually see how skilled they are. Eichel is a freak with the puck, and he's always worth the price of admission. No, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, right. So again, as far as poker goes, I just came back from Europe, and I'll be taking about a week or 2 off, and then I'm going to be playing at the Poker Go studio at Aria. And then later in December, there is a huge event at the Wynn with a $15 million guarantee. They've been promoting the hell out of it, and the Wynn is a nice place to play. And then we have the PGT Championship, which is the Poker Go Tour Championship. It's for the top 21 point getters throughout the year. And I've squeaked my way into number 20 right now. So I know I need to get probably 200, 300 more points, and I'll be doing that every day at the Aria, trying to grind and get my way in that, because it sounds like a lot of a fun that event. It's a free roll, $500,000. Why not?
Oh, nice. I have no doubt that you'll definitely get there. Have you had any time to play golf during all this?
I haven't golfed at all, and ever since my hand. But I'm supposed to shoot something that's golf related, and I'm like, I haven't hit a ball in a year, and this is going to be very embarrassing. So
no, don't say that.
I'm at my house right now because my house had mold, and I had to move out, and I have a simulator in my house, but now I'm in this rental place, and I don't have a simulator here at this rental.
Your house had mold? How does that happen? Were you getting sick?
Badly. Yeah, it was killing us. Me and my wife for a long time. We found the worst kinds of mold in our house.
That's awful.
We found a great guy who's done a great job, and he said after he's done with this house, you'll be able to operate in it. So
there's a word for that. That's called a bad beat.
It was everywhere. And I started to feel it really bad. Like Luckily, I have one of these recovery apps with my Apple Watch and stuff, this app called Athletic, similar to the Whoop band or whatever. And I noticed every day I wasn't even working out, and it says you overtrained. I'm like, I didn't do anything, and it was consistent. And all of a sudden, I'm like, what's going on? I went to Korea for 5 days and said my recovery's perfect. And then I went home and it says, nope, you overtrained. And like, okay, put 2 and 2 together. Something's up with this house.
I'm just curious, what are the symptoms like, because a lot of people don't know, like what happens to you when you have a lot of mold in your house?
Well, there's a lot of different symptoms. One can be headaches. One can
Yeah.
be shortness of breath. One can be feeling like chest congestion, things like that. Like lack of energy, fatigue, that sort of thing. And that's what I was feeling. My wife had been feeling it for a lot longer. She usually spends time in a different part of the house. And I sort of just dismissed it as like, women things, right? I'm like, but then I realized, like, when I experienced it myself, I'm like, this is bad. And luckily we had a guy do just, he took all the samples to the lab and he unfortunately found the worst kind of mold, the black mold. I don't remember the name of it, but, so I would say this, I would highly recommend anybody listening to get either the Whoop or the Aura or one of these apps to track your health each day. Because sometimes you'll find, because I didn't feel bad the first couple of weeks, but my numbers were bad. I'm like, this is peculiar. And then it started to progressively get worse. And we put 2 and 2 together and realized something was up with the house. Like, people have died from this. Brittany Murphy, remember the actress?
Yes.
She died because of this. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought it was a drug overdose or something with her. That was mold in her. Oh my God, that's awful. I didn't know that. Well, geez, that's serious. I'm glad you and your wife are doing okay now. You're all right?
Much better. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Being here a week, you already noticed the difference.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. Well, I'm happy to hear you guys are doing better. I had no idea. That's terrible, man. That's actually really scary, but I'm glad you guys are doing better now. Daniel, always a pleasure having you on. It's been a little while and I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm sure we'll talk hockey.
Next time we'll talk, because I heard you, I was listening before, we'll talk more about the Elon Musk stuff, because I'm deep into that. I'm deep into those streets.
Let's do that. Maybe next week or after the holidays. Maybe after the holidays, let's have a little talk about Elon Musk and Twitter and social media and all that stuff. Daniel, it's always a pleasure having you on, my friend. You're always one of my favorite guests. I appreciate your time as always. Have a great weekend and have a good holiday if I don't talk to you, okay?
All right, man. Same back at you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Daniel. That's Daniel Negreanu. Man, that's some scary stuff, dude. The mold in his house. And I didn't know Brittany Murphy died of that. I had no idea. I thought it was an overdose or something. Holy crap. I guess that means everywhere I go, I'm around mold, because I'm always lethargic and tired and don't feel like doing anything and lazy. So I guess the KSHP studios have mold. Well, actually, that might be true. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we can find out about that. I don't know. But I'm always lethargic. So maybe my car has mold in it. Maybe my apartment has mold in it. Everywhere I go, I don't know. I'll check that out. But anyway, I'm glad Daniel and